Washington's Research Extension Center. She's going to talk about the science and on-farm practice of biodegradable mulches on one of her trips to Spain and Italy.
Graduate students that keep messing everything up. What's it? You should drop that in here somehow. Sorry, Lisa. That's totally not your presentation. That's not good. What's going on? No. You probably don't want this, do you?
It's not showing up on
You're okay.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Wahardi, for that introduction, and thank you to Chris for the technology. This is going to be a pretty different presentation relative to what you've probably heard throughout the day. This is a presentation Chris asked me about because he also works with biodegradable plastic mulches with some of the faculty at Washington State University and collaborating scientists here in the US. And he asked me to share about some of the experiences and things that I learned when I went as part of a scientific delegation to Spain and Italy to learn more about the science and on-farm practices of biodegradable mulch use. So as you know from Juan's presentation, we've been looking at biodegradable plastic mulches in tissue culture red raspberry, and when I began the program in 2014, we started looking at the application of biodegradable mulches in day-neutral strawberry, and we're going to be continuing some of that work in fall-planted day-neutral strawberry as well. And so thinking about biodegradable mulches and also serving on an advisory committee, the opportunity arose to be able to travel to both Spain and Italy to learn more about biodegradable mulch science and on-farm application as part of a scientific delegation. And we took that trip from June 25th to July 4th of 2014. And so what this presentation will really focus on is really what happened and what transpired during that trip, and what are some of the things that I learned. And also, I really want to try to give you an insight on what the farmers informed us about why they are using biodegradable mulches. So the objectives, and I think it's hard for a research nerd like myself to kind of separate away and just telling you, giving you a slideshow, but the objectives that we were focused on for this trip were to learn about biodegradable mulch research from scientific colleagues in Europe, where they have a long history of doing research on biodegradable plastic and paper mulch, as well as on-farm application, and also to meet with some of the manufacturers that are producing some of the key materials that go into biodegradable mulches. And then the second and third bullet point were really where a lot of my interests were perked, was to observe on farms that have short and long-term history of using biodegradable mulches and see what those soils look like, and get a better handle on what those farmers perceive after using these materials both short and long-term. And then also, we were part of a delegation that also participated in an international symposium. So we got to share some of the information that we've learned both in strawberry as well as red raspberry at that venue. So in case you're just walking in, you didn't have an opportunity to hear Juan's definition in terms of what a biodegradable mulch is. This slide is here for you. So a biodegradable mulch is an agricultural mulch engineered to biodegrade upon incorporation in the soils. They may be cellulose-based like a paper mulch, but we're really focusing on the plastic-based biodegradable mulches. Now they're made with very different feedstocks that the polyethylene mulches are made out of, but there's still a lot of them are plastics derived from materials like thermoplastic starch or algae fermentation products. And so here on this image here, if you can see, These pellets are actually a plastic feedstock that gets melted and blended with other additives, and then is either blown or extruded through a machine like this to make a mulch film that's applied in the field. And they're really being perceived as a potential solution to plastic waste generation that can occur with polyethylene use. In addition to that, there's also some benefits that are associated with biodegradable mulch use, with mitigating some of the labor that comes with having to physically remove polyethylene mulch and then dispose of it and have to worry about, how are you going to dispose of this product? So those are some of the perceived benefits. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to distinguish what a biodegradable mulch is from an oxo-degradable mulch film. So biodegradable mulch film, as Juan already alluded to, is capable of being broken down by biological activity. That's where the bio and biodegradable mulch comes from. And it's broken down into CO2, water, energy for those microorganisms that are breaking down that product and incorporating that into their own microbial biomass. To be a biodegradable plastic mulch, though, you have to meet very specific ASTM or ISO standards. So it's a label that means that you're going to be having to meet certain degradation standpoints that are defined and tested. What's different is the oxo-degradable. These are conventional polymers that are made with chemicals that are added to enhance oxidation and fragmentation. So this is a physiochemical, not a biological process. And because it's not being broken down into these byproducts or being incorporated into the microorganism's biomass, it in fact is actually being fragmented into smaller plastic mulch pieces. So again, it's not biodegrading, it's a fragmentation process. And sometimes, I want to let you guys know, in case you're thinking about this type of technology on your farm, they're sometimes being erroneously labeled as biodegradable or oxo-degradable or biodegradable, but they don't have to meet the same standards that the biodegradable mulch materials have to, and they fragment. And just to kind of show it, this is a picture not taken in Spain or Italy. This is actually taken on a farm in Everett, Washington by Andrew Berry and Dr. Marcus Fleury's program. And it just shows after 3 years of after 3 years after using an oxo-degradable product, this is what the farmer still sees in his field. He sees these fragments of plastic mulch, which can have some implications on soil health as well as off-site as well. So be careful if you're thinking about biodegradable mulches, and be wary of the oxo-degradable products. Just as an aside, to be a biodegradable mulch product, what these manufacturers are striving for is 90% biodegradation in 2 years, and many of these materials are fully broken down within 13 months. All right, so now let's switch gears and talk more about this trip to Spain and Italy that I took. The locations that I was in Catalonia, which is where Barcelona is located in Spain, and then in the Piedmont region in Italy, which is the northern part of Italy. And I'll talk first about the trip in Catalonia, Spain. This is where a lot of vegetable production occurs, primarily for the high population density area of Barcelona. So on June 26th, we arrived, and then on June 27th, we focused our time on visiting farms in the Mediterranean. So the the red star that you see there, that's Lleida. And then the blue stars, those are our various visits on the Mediterranean coastal part. And then on June 8th, we visited inland areas. And the reason we went to these various areas is to look at farms using biodegradable mulches that have different climates as well as different soil texture conditions. So we were able to see farms using these materials that had sandy soils, high clay soils, and loamy soils. So Lleida, we first stopped at the University of Lleida and met up with our colleague as well as our host, Dr. Luis Martin Closas. And he is one of the leading researchers on biodegradable mulch science in the world, and he's based in Catalonia. But just some interesting history, the University of Lleida was the first university founded in Catalonia, and it was founded in 1300, and then in 1717 during the Spanish War of Succession, because they didn't support the winning side of that war, they were closed down through royal law for a period of time, and they weren't refounded until 1991. So just a little bit of interesting history that we don't really experience here in the United States. While we were there, not only did we get to visit Luis's lab, where we got to see how he measures biodegradation under laboratory conditions of these different materials, but we got to learn about how they're doing outreach and how other scientists at that university are looking at various properties of these mulch films, like mechanical properties, chemical properties, how are they measuring surface and in-soil degradation, and they were doing a lot of works on toxicology. So how do these breakdown products influence, say, aquatic algae like Daphnia or crops, and then looking at crop production impacts. And then on June 27th is when we had our first on-farm visit. And I'm just going to highlight a few farms and the farmers and really kind of showcase what those farmers were doing and why or why not they were excited about biodegradable mulches in their system. So first is Antony of Mataró. He is a medium acreage mixed vegetable farm, and the crops that they're growing are tomato, lettuce, and onion. And his soils were incredibly sandy. I don't know if this picture really does it justice, but he's just right up on the coast. Antony has been using biodegradable plastic mulches on his farm for 2 years, and he switched over from using polyethylene mulch. In his words, he's adopted the technology, he really likes it, and he's gone in so far to host other farm-to-farm education opportunities and demonstrations to teach other growers about biodegradable mulches and why he's using it. And then just as you're coming into Antony's farm and you were to look at his farm and then turn around, this is the view that you'd be facing on the opposite side. That's the Mediterranean. So he is really right up along the coast there and has some nice coastal breezes that come through on his farm. So Antony, and something that we saw kind of consistently throughout these farm visits is that instead of purchasing a machine to lay their mulch film, they were working with a local iron maker to make a mulch layer, and then they would modify accordingly to suit their needs. So this was the mulch layer that Antony was using on his farm. It simultaneously lays the mulch film and it punches the holes at the same time, and depending on the crop and the need, it can also lay drip tape. For him, laying is a 1 to 2 person job, where really one person holds at the end and buries the mulch roll, and then the driver on the tractor with the trailer just goes forward and lays the film. So it's a pretty simple job, but it's also a very temperature sensitive job, and this was something that we kind of learned through these growers that were using biodegradable mulches in these very warm conditions, is that these biodegradable mulch films are very different than PE. When it becomes hot, the mulch film embrittles and it starts to break more easily. And we were visiting around 10 in the morning, and when he started laying his mulch as a demonstration to show how he's doing it, the mulch film broke, which is undesirable. And his comment was, truly, if you want to be laying this type of mulch film, you're doing it really early in the morning or later in the afternoon when it's not so hot, or really later in the evening there. And then I thought it might be interesting just to see a video, if it'll work, of Antony and his mulch layer, so you can kind of get a sense of the operation that he's working with and the speed of this particular mulch layer. And this is a field where he was going to be planting lettuce. And just a word of disclosure, as much as I wanted to visit, say, a strawberry producer or a caneberry producer that's using biodegradable mulch products, there were none. So this talk is really going to just focus on vegetable farmers' perceptions and how they're using biodegradable mulches. Throughout the course of this visit, I just went through and kind of listed the pros and cons that Antony provided us for why he is using biodegradable mulches and what he sees as the benefits. And in his opinion, it provided the same crop benefits as polyethylene mulch. He really liked the fact that he didn't have to physically remove the mulch from his farm, which is a laborious job, and it also is an issue of how do you deal with that plastic waste after you've removed it from the field. What is the disposal cost and constraints? He just has to till it in, and he thought that was a very easy approach. He also feels with his very sandy soils that have low organic matter that by incorporating the biodegradable mulch film, he's doing a benefit to his soils. And he feels, and he doesn't have the data or anything to back this up, but he feels that he's actually adding organic matter to his soils. And his plans were to continue biodegradable mulch use into the future in lieu of polyethylene mulch. But some of the cons, it's a higher cost. I know here in the US, if you were to use a biodegradable mulch product, it is about 3 to 4 times more expensive than standard polyethylene mulch. And there's also a learning curve. As I mentioned before, it's not polyethylene. It's very different in how you apply it. But Antony's comment was that he felt he could overcome that learning curve within a day. And he's also experimenting to try to extend the use of that biodegradable mulch product with that higher initial cost. So when we visited, he told us about some of the double cropping he was doing with his lettuce. So he'd plant the lettuce, harvest it later, and then plant right back into that biodegradable mulch film to try to extend its use. And he felt it was something that was working on his farm situation. The next day, who I want to highlight is Joseph of Vall. He's a medium acreage mixed vegetable farmer. He's also a really new farmer. He's only been growing for about 4 years. The crops that he's growing are melon, squash, onion, artichoke, kale, tomato, and he's trying to grow more Asian vegetables like bok choy to cater to a certain clientele. Since he's inland, he's a lot hotter and he's a lot drier, and he doesn't have that coastal breeze. Also, his soils are very high clay content, so very different soil situation. He's also certified organic, so he's again trying to reach a certain clientele of buyers, and that's why he's chose. And just to kind of let you know, so this is Joseph, and then this is Dr. Luis, who was our host and translator in many situations. Joseph was unique in that instead of the plastic biodegradable mulches, he was using a cellulose or paper-based material, and he had very specific reasons why he was using the paper material. He felt that it still provided the labor savings as the plastic ones, but he felt that paper was more likely to provide organic matter, and then also it was the only mulch that was durable enough to resist penetration by yellow nutsedge. And that is a big problem on his farm, is how to control yellow nutsedge. And he felt both, well, and he had experience with both polyethylene and the plastic biodegradable mulch films, and that nutsedge was able to puncture and penetrate through it. So the paper was a better fit for him. And this is a picture of Joseph's farm and some of the paper mulch material. He felt that the paper, you know, despite the benefits that caused him to adopt it, it still wasn't as forgiving as some of the plastic material, that he noticed very different properties of that paper mulch film based on humidity. And so it might go on pretty well, but then contract and lead to cracking in the field, like you can see here on this picture. Also, the soil had to be tilled pretty well so that you wouldn't have any clods. If you did have clods in your soil, that might also cause breakage of the paper mulch. And then what we've seen in some of our strawberry trials that we did at the station at Mount Vernon is that if you get a little bit of wind coming up on that paper, it just seems to blow it off a lot more easily. So it's not as forgiving in Joseph's experience. And then just to kind of give you a sense of where we were, this is Joseph talking to the group about mulch use on his farm. And then this is just kind of the environment surrounding his farm where he was at. And then on that same day, and who I also wanted to highlight was Manuelo of Vilanova. Manuelo was interesting in that he is a very large farmer, and he's growing both vegetables and fruit, but no fruits with biodegradable mulches that I can tell you about. His soils were loamy, and he has the distinction of being the first biodynamic and certified organic farm in Spain, and he's been growing biodynamically and certified organic for 30 years. He also was the first grower to test and adopt biodegradable plastic mulches, and so he's been using this material for about 15 to 20 years. And so here it was really interesting to see his soils where he's been doing long-term application of biodegradable plastic mulches and see really there is no plastic mulch buildup in his soils to speak of after this long-term use. The other interesting thing about Joseph is he also engages in a lot of value addition of his products, just like Harley Soltis talked about earlier this morning in this room. And then this is Manuelo right here. And so this is a picture of his farm, and this is a farm that a biodynamic certified field that is growing processing tomato. And the reason I want to highlight that it's biodynamic is that if you're a biodynamic grower, a lot of these restrictions on what you can and can't do on your field are more stringent than being an organic grower. And if you're going to cover your soil, no more than 50% can be covered. So that's why you only see really narrow, thin strips of biodegradable or plastic mulch on Manuelo's farm, is that he wants to meet the certifications for being biodynamic. And then here we had a chance to visit and just kind of learn how do you evaluate biodegradable mulch film and its biodegradation with some of the mulch manufacturers that go out and assess this. And it's simply a matter of, pulling and seeing, is it fracturing or is it still resisting, breakage when you're pulling it. And so her assessment in this situation was that it's been biodegrading quite nicely and what they expect. So on June 29th, the day following that, we hopped on a plane and went to the Piedmont region of Italy, and we stayed in Novara for a tour of Novamont, which is an agrochemical and bioplastic producer, and then participate in our symposium. And then on July 1st, we were in the Piedmont region, the second Lake Orta, and then the third we were in Parma. So here we were really focused on this area until the third. We went to the Parma region of Italy to look at biodegradable mulch use. And then on 4th of July, I did the patriotic thing and left Spain and Italy for the US. So on the 30th, the tour of Novamont, just to kind of give you a sense, Novamont and Novara and that region has some really interesting ties to the agrochemical industry. So at the same time that Haber and Bosch in Germany were trying to develop synthetic urea. Italian scientists are trying to do the same thing and synthesize urea, and they also have the distinction of having scientists in that area that develop polypropylene, which is also used in agriculture, like weed mat is a polypropylene-based material. And So what Novamont does is they manufacture both bioplastic and biochemicals, and what they're most well known for is Matter B, which is a compostable and biodegradable feedstock that goes into a lot of biodegradable mulch products. Juan's Bio 360 biodegradable mulch treatment is made with the Matter B feedstock material. And they look at making bioplastic from starches, cellulose, as well as vegetable oils. And kind of the continuous thread through all of the visits, including Novamont and on farms, was this closed loop. So they are really striving for systems where they're growing materials that can be used to manufacture these biodegradable mulch feedstocks and biodegradable mulches that get incorporated in the soil and can be grown to make the next biodegradable mulch, which is just an interesting thing that kept on reoccurring in our visits. And these are just various products that Novamont is making. So, you know, we're really focusing on the biodegradable plastic mulches, but they're also making these coffee pods that are biodegradable, as well as utensils. And one of their biggest sellers are biodegradable or compostable plastic bags, because the EU has banned regular plastic bags. And they've done some of their own degradation testing in their own labs to demonstrate, you know, what they expect to see in their product from a biodegradation or composting standpoint. All right, and then on July 1st, we were looking at new applications of biodegradable mulches, and that was in rice production. So Northern Italy, what they're primarily growing is rice, like high-value risotto rice, and Novamont is based right there, and so they had farmers come to their door and say, we know you're making these biodegradable mulch products. We think it'd be interesting to test these products in our rice production systems, and Novamont worked with them to do that. So they've been testing biodegradable mulches in rice for 3 years now, and what they're doing in this system is that at the same time that they're seeding the rice, they're applying the biodegradable mulch film, and they allow it to grow before they let the water in for the typical rice production. And so now they're starting to see both conventional and organic producers adopt biodegradable plastic mulches in rice production in this region, and their main reason why they're using it is for weed management. And so just to kind of take you to the Europe situation again, they have a lot more stringent regulations on what they can use from a weed management perspective, both conventional and organic. So for them, this was a good solution for them to control weeds in their production system. And also drawing back to Juan's presentation, Juan had mentioned that right now there are no organic approved biodegradable plastic mulches can be used in organic farming situations, but there's no commercial product that meets the NOSB's standards. Whereas in Europe, the producers are allowed to use biodegradable mulches. So our NOSB is a lot more stringent on use of biodegradable plastic mulches than the EU. That EU farmers are able to use it and maintain that organic certification. Some of the other interesting research that was going on with Novamont, again, the manufacturers, is that they're also looking at if biodegradable mulches can be used as part of a soil solarization process to manage soil-borne diseases. They didn't have any results, but that's what this picture is highlighting, is that they're looking at other applications beyond just weed management and promotion of crop growth from a horticulture perspective, but also looking at it as trying to manage soil-borne pathogens. And then July 2nd, not July 3rd, that was Sunday, so we had to go out and enjoy ourselves a little bit more and not visit farms. So we went to Lake Orta, which is just basically south of the Alps, and did some tourism there. And then July 3rd, the day before departure, we focused our visits on looking at how growers that are processing tomato are using biodegradable mulches. So just to kind of get you up to speed, processing tomato has really only been an industry in this area since 1887. Most of the processing tomato industry is concentrated in southern Italy, and according to the Novamont manufacturers, about 30% of the processing tomato growers are using biodegradable plastic mulches. It's very compatible with their system, and I'll highlight why it's compatible. But for northern Italy, biodegradable mulches are a very new technology, so they're just starting to look at it in the northern Italian processing tomato production systems. But they're starting to be adopted by both conventional and organic producers on small scales in northern Italy, but on rather large scales in southern Italy. And so just to kind of give you an idea of these pictures here, this actually is a fresh market tomato production field also using biodegradable plastic mulches for the weed benefits and fitting into their production standards. And then this is immediately behind it. So the Parma region is also known for cheese production, like Parmesan cheese. So that was also present from an agriculture perspective and a production perspective in this area. And so when we got to meet with processors and growers, like this individual right here, They had also very specific reasons why they were excited or had already adopted biodegradable plastic mulches on their farm. And the number one reason is that it is compatible with mechanical harvesting. So these aren't hand-picked tomatoes. They're picked by a machine, a single row or double row harvester that basically separates the tomato from the plant and scoops it up from the soil. If you were to do this with a polyethylene mulch film, the way that it digs up the plant and separates the soil from the plant and the fruit and then blows it all off in the back as you collect your fruit off of this belt here, is that you would have shards of polyethylene mulch film in your field that would be difficult or impossible to pick up. But if it's a biodegradable mulch product, you can utilize this type of harvesting equipment, and if those biodegradable mulch fragments get returned to your field, that's no problem, because that's what they're intended to do. So it worked very well in their system, and also because they are not able to utilize polyethylene mulch in their system because of how they harvest, they got us to see a lot of the benefits from mulch use. So they were better able to control weeds, they got to reduce herbicide application, which was important for them. They saw the promotion and crop growth that you see with use of mulches. They also got earliness in harvesting, water use efficiency. Another big one for them was that they got a cleaner product because no longer were the tomatoes resting on the soil, but they were resting on the mulch surface. And I thought, I don't know, I like equipment, and I thought this, if I can get it to work, and it might not work from a technology perspective, but again, this is just an image to try, it was supposed to be a video showing how you harvest a tomato. Again, the blades go down underneath the soil, raises the plant up, and it separates the plant from the plant roots from the soil. It chops off the vines, and essentially it separates the fruit out, and the fruit goes on a belt onto the machine. Just click it. Nope, not working. That's okay. Hopefully moving my arms around and describing it gives you an image. But again, what's the leftover plant debris as well as the soil just gets blown out and dumped in the back. If you had a polyethylene mulch material, again, you'd have polyethylene plastics in your field. Again, that can have some soil health ramifications. So not something that tomato producers wanted to do. So they were excited about the biodegradable mulch product because that can be incorporated in their soils with hopefully no ill cause. And so, it was a very intense trip, but we did get to go out a couple of afternoons and one day on the weekend to go do some sightseeing. So I already mentioned Lake Orta. We spent a day in Milan and got to visit some of the historical sites there. Periodically, we had to stop and eat for lunch. And so this was an image that we took during our Mediterranean on-farm visits where we stopped and ate lunch on just a glorious view of the Mediterranean. And if anyone knows me, I love coffee. Espresso was great there. And then also I'm from Iowa. I love pork products and the prosciutto and the salami. I'm sorry, vegetarians, but it was divine. And then really basically jumped on a plane July 4th, got back to the United States, and was ready to hop on a machine and start doing some raspberry harvest trials thereafter. So that was just an overview of the trip and what we learned. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Where do you guys source your biofilm from?
Sure. So the question, where do we source our biofilm from? So we are getting our biodegradable mulch film from Bio360, which is based in Quebec, Canada. They use the Mataró product from Italy to make the Bio360 biodegradable mulch. It goes into a lot of other biodegradable mulches. And then the other one we source from BASF. They make the feedstock that goes into the organics biodegradable mulch feedstock. If it's something you're interested in, I'm not sure yet if OVS or WaterTech or local suppliers have it yet, but I can get you some contacts if you're interested in trying it out. Yeah. I think, and I see Randy, I don't want to call him, but I think he just went straight to the manufacturer as well to try to get the biodegradable mulch products. Okay, great. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks.